What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPaPa, and here we are with what I think is a really cool and really relevant video. So in this video, we're going to be looking at the top 10 most expensive cards that came out in 2021 and how they performed up to this point today. Now, if you remember, not long ago, we did a video on the 10 most expensive cards that came out in 2020 and where they're at today. Now, these videos, I think, are relevant because guess what? We just finished with the first year of Scarlet and Violet, which 2020 was the first year of Sword and Shield, and now we're heading into the second year of Scarlet and Violet, and 2021 was the second year of Sword and Shield. Now, we have to take all of this with a huge grain of salt. All of us know, we are acutely aware that 2020 and 2021 were not your typical Pokemon years, right? Like, we had the pandemic that was going on. 2020 really was the height of the pandemic pump. In 2021, things were starting to come back down, but they were still far from what we would consider normal. However, I think it is really relevant to see how these cards have performed. We're going to look at PSA 10 prices, we're going to look at raw card prices, we're going to look at where they started on the list and where they finished on the list, and all of this is just awesome Poke knowledge for us, right? I always talk about try and play chess when everybody else is playing checkers. So the more past data that we can look at to give us some indication of what might happen in the future just helps us level up our game a little bit. Now, listen, this is really cool stuff. There's some epic sets. I mean, look at that. You all know how much I love Fusion Strike. Obviously, you have Celebrations on there. You have Evolving Skies on there. Shining Fates, we all know Shining Fates was printed into the ground, right? That was the one that came out super early in 2021, and you know, the Pokemon Company was trying to match demand, so they printed it through the roof. And then Chilling Reign, I'm super bullish on Chilling Reign too. I think that is a set that has a lot of upside, especially from a sealed perspective here in the near future. And then Battle Styles booster boxes, I mean, you can pick them up for right around $100 now. I mean, I just saw one where you could buy 2 Battle Styles booster boxes for $220 with free shipping on eBay, and not a bad deal right there. So lots of cool stuff that we're going to learn on this video. And the most interesting thing for me was when I made this video, I was just reminiscing and thinking about some of the learnings from the 2020 video. And when I put the 2020 video next to the 2021 video, there's a lot of really cool stuff. So much so that I'm going to be doing a whole video on that. So listen, if these kinds of things get you excited, if you want to be the first one to get the information when the new video drops, hit that subscribe button. We try and do fun stuff like this all the time. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up. Questions or comments, drop them down below. Those 3 small things go a long way in helping my small channel out. Lets me know you appreciate the work that I put in. So without further ado, let's get into these 10 cards because there are some awesome pieces of cardboard on here. So first off, we're starting off with the golden secret rare Snorlax from Chilling Reign. Now, when Chilling Reign came out, this was the hot card, right? This was the #1 card. You'll see on the chart down below, the orange line represents the PSA 10 price, and then you'll see the green and the blue lines, which represent the raw card price, which is essentially the eBay card price. And then you have the TCG player price, and you'll see that the orange line is always way up there, right? PSA 10, but the green and blue are usually pretty close to each other. Now, when Chilling Reign came out, as I said, this was the #1 most valuable card in that set. This was the big chase card, but it is now the #3 most valuable card in the set, and that is something that we talk about. We do a ton of data dives on this channel. We looked at all the Sun and Moon chase cards, right? And I think only 2 of the 12 ended up being the full chase card, so the #1 most expensive card from the time the set released up until today. So it's very important to remember as we're getting into Scarlet and Violet that the #1 card now, the odds are, if it follows any of the trends from the past, the #1 card today has a high probability of not being the #1 card in 12, 18, 24 months. So that's just something to keep top of mind. Now, the other thing that you'll see on that orange line right there when I'm talking about PSA 10 prices is we all know there's the Pokemon pop and flop, right? Like the cards come out, the first ones that get graded hit the market, and they sell for these ridiculous high prices. Can you imagine paying $900 for this Snorlax in a PSA 10? Well, guess what? Somebody did. Actually, a couple somebodies did because there was more than one sale at that $900 price point, which is really crazy. But then you'll see it starts to normalize. So what I try and do is I say, hey, what's a decent price point? So for this one, I said all the way, it came out in June of 2021, all the way through February of 2022, so for over the first 8 months, this card in a PSA 10 was still going for over $400. However, now it is going for $125. What a big overall decline over the last couple years. Speaking of decline, even the raw card has come down, right? So again, this data was this list was originally made on December the 3rd of 2021. So again, that price up there is from December 3rd of 2021 at $91.28. Now this card in the raw form is going for right around $60. So an overall loss of 34% from then till now. So big loss in the PSA 10 space, big loss in the raw card space. And again, it's not even the #1 most valuable card in Chilling Reign anymore. Super cool stuff stuff to remember as we're going through this. And then talking about a card that has kind of fall from graces from Evolving Skies, this Rayquaza right here. I absolutely love this card. The art is absolutely fire. But think about this. This was the number 9 most expensive card at the end of 2021 that came out that year. Now it is only the 8th most expensive card in the whole Evolving Skies set, right? So it is just crazy how these cards fluctuate in value and they shift positions over times. And that's just one of the biggest takeaways that I took from the last video and this one. So again, went from number 9 overall down to number 8 overall just in Evolving Skies. And again, when you look at the PSA 10s, again, over 8 months, it was up over the $300 price point. Now it's dropped by about 50% because this one is going for $150 in a PSA 10 slab. And additionally, the raw card has come down. It was at $93. Now it's down 25%. You can get this for right around $70. But again, think about how far down the list this has come. Again, say it one more time. Went from the number 9 most valuable card that came out in 2021. Now it is the number 8 most valuable card just in the Evolving Skies set. That doesn't necessarily speak to the weakness of this card. I think it speaks to the excitement and all of the energy and all of the value that people have found over the last couple years in Evolving Skies. So really cool to see this one in at number 9. Now, this Sylveon VMAX, sticking with Evolving Skies. Spoiler alert, there's going to be a lot of Evolving Skies on here, right? This went from the 8th most valuable in 2021, and it fared a little bit better. It is still the 3rd most valuable, and 3rd in Evolving Skies in 2021. Now it's the 5th most valuable in Evolving Skies. So it did fare a little bit better than the last one. It didn't drop quite as far, right? It went from number 3 in Evolving Skies. It only dropped 2 spaces. It's number 5 in Evolving Skies right now. And again, it held its PSA 10 value a little bit longer, right? So after 14 months after it came out, it was still north of $300, and now it's $185. So, you know, less than a 50% price depreciation. You know, it held value a little bit longer, but still, I mean, that's a pretty big price drop, right? Over $300 for 14 months, and now it's down to $185, and it's coming from Evolving Skies, which is the Big Daddy set from the Sword and Shield era. Now, the thing that I loved about this one is, guess what? Even though the PSA 10 price has come down, look at the raw card price. The raw card price has actually gone up. It went from $94 back then. Now the raw card of this is going to cost you about $110, and this was a big aha moment for me. You know, I always think that raw cards and PSA 10 prices kind of move in lockstep. If one's going up, one's coming up, the other one's going down, the one's going down, like they just move in tandem. But it was really interesting to see that as the population of this card continued to increase in PSA 10, right? You see I keep the population on all these slides, population of 3,074 in PSA 10. The PSA 10 prices come down and the raw card has come up. Absolutely awesome takeaways from this video, and we're going to see that more than once as we continue to go through these. Now, coming is the next one of my favorite cards in the whole Sword and Shield era. You know I love this Gengar. You know I love the Giratina. Like, those are two of my favorite ones. The Giratina from Lost Origin, obviously this Gengar from Fusion Strike. And Fusion Strike's also one of my favorite sets of the whole Sword and Shield era, so no surprise that those go 1 and 2. But what's interesting here, again, we talk about the shift in the top 10 cards of these sets. This one started off as the 3rd most expensive card in Fusion Strike, and now it is by far and away the number 1 most expensive card in Fusion Strike. This card has done really well. If you look at the graph down below, it's very different than the graphs that we've seen in the past, right? That PSA 10 price started off high, then it came down, but look how it's been chugging its way back up, right? It's been up and down and up and down. And when I see price movements like that, it just tells me that the market really does love this card, because when it starts to get down below a certain point, everybody piles in and buys it. It's called a support line, right? The market supports it at a certain price, and it just finds its way back up. So over the course of the time, guess what? It has pretty much been flat. The PSA 10 price has been flat. We can't say a lot of things have been flat over the last couple years, especially something that came out in 2021. So really, really strong showing here for this Gengar. The PSA 10s are going for about $400 right now, in that $380 range. And the PSA 10 population is getting close to 4,000 at this point. Now, another thing, PSA 10 price has been flat, but look at the raw card value, right? You could have gotten this for $100 at the end of 2021. Now, in the raw form, it is up 61% for $166. Absolutely amazing to see 2 instances where the raw cards have outperformed the PSA 10 price point. Huge learning for me, and I can't wait to do some more content on that exact point later on in the future. Now, Coming in at number 6, the big card from Chilling Reign, right? This is one that we did see that ran the gambit. So in December of 2021, this was the most expensive card in Chilling Reign. This was the number 1 card. Well, guess what? Here it is today. It is the most expensive card in the set. Now, the Snorlax card at launch was the most expensive one, but it quickly fell off, and this Blaziken quickly took over. So in December, this was the number 1 card in Chilling Reign, and now it has still held that crown up until today. And think about it. Look at how awesome this artwork is. Like, sometimes there's a card, it doesn't have to be your favorite Pokemon in the world. It doesn't have to be, you know, the most popular one or the one that everybody's, you know, all about. But I tell you what, sometimes artwork can just carry the price, and that's certainly what we're seeing here. Now, the PSA 10s were in the $300 range since April of 2022, but guess what? Now it is still really, really close to $300, coming in at $278. So another one that has pretty much been flat, and that is just amazing to see. Another thing here is look at the raw card price. Another one where the raw card was about $105 in December of 21, and now it is all the way up to $176, a growth of 66% over the last couple years. Absolutely insane. Now, the PSA 10 population of this one is about 1,000 less than that Gengar that we just looked at. So the population here in PSA 10 is about 2,100. So does it have more room to run? I don't know, but I certainly love the art. I love everything about this card, and it might have a very bright future ahead of it. Now, coming in at number 5, we have the Mew. I left the words epic artwork on this one, again, because I think the artwork on this is absolutely stunning. And the fact that it has dropped 51% from a raw card price from $115 when it came out, and now it is down to $55. I think it's a great opportunity for people like me who love the card. You know, I might have not paid $115 for it a couple years ago, but if I can get it in the $50 range, I think it is an absolute stunner. Now, the PSA 10s were going for about $250 all the way through November of 2022. So for about a year, it was holding that price at $250 in the PSA 10. Now it is down to $105 in a PSA 10 holder, dropping over 50%. Absolutely awesome information here. Awesome learnings for all of us as we're going through year 2 of Scarlet and Violet, as we're looking at how these year 2 cards from Sword and Shield have performed from a raw card perspective and from a PSA 10 perspective. This is why we do the videos, and these are some of the cool things that we learn along the way. Now, coming in at number 4, listen, this is the world of evolutions that we're in right now. We get the Espeon right here, another big card from Fusion Strike. And this is the one that started off as number 1, right? It started off as number 1 in Fusion Strike. It's now number 2 behind the Gengar. And it's just a cool card, right? I love everything about it. We all know Fusion Strike has some really crazy pull rates, but the PSA 10s have been up and down a bit. Like when you look at that graph, it's another one where we see it started off almost flat there for the first 4 or 5 months. Then it came down, then it started to pop its way back up. And at the end of the day, you know, it is down, okay? So through November to December, so for about, you know, about a year there, it was holding strong at that $380 price point, and now it's down to $255. So not as big of a price depreciation as we've seen in some of the other ones, but it is down. And now the population in this is getting near the 4,000 mark. Now that is a really, really high population for a card like this in my mind. You know, I think certain Pokemon can just be absorbed more in a hobby at a higher PSA 10 population. When we look at the most graded and most popular ones, we know Charizard's one of them, we know Pikachu's one of them. You know, there's just these names that you hear all over the place that just everybody seems to love. The hobby will absorb a higher population, but this one getting near 4,000 in a PSA 10 pop with a lot more of these to be ripped and a lot more of these to get graded gives me a little bit of a pause. But even though the PSA 10 price is down, guess what? The raw card, another one where we see really strong raw card performance rate, it is flat over the last couple years, which again is a really, really strong showing for this card and a really strong showing for Fusion Strike. Think about it, that Gengar card is up like 60% and the number 2 chase card is flat despite all of the craziness that the market has gone through lately. Really strong showing for Fusion Strike and the singles that are in there. Now, Shining Fates is the one, and I can't wait to share this number with you. Shining Fates was the set that I shared earlier, which was absolutely printed into the ground. Pokemon said, listen, we're done with the scalping. We're done with people buying this at MSRP and then selling it for 2, 3x. We're just going to print Shining Fates. And you can still get Shining Fates on the Pokemon Center today. I don't know if it's ever going to sell out. They just might have more Shining Fates than they know what to do with. It might turn into a 1952 Topps baseball thing where they just take a barge out into the middle of the ocean and they just dump it all in there because they don't know what to do with it. But certainly a set that was printed into oblivion. Now, the price graph is insane, so I don't even know how to explain this other than saying that because some of the initial prices in PSA 10 for this were so ludicrously high, yes, there were sales way north of $2,000. There were sales at $3,800, there were sales at $3,500, there were sales all the way down to the $2,000 mark, and then guess what? It held pretty steady at $1,000 there. Now, all the way through March of 2022, this card was still north of $400 in a PSA 10 holder. Now it is down to $170. Look at that PSA 10 population report. 15,211 of these cards are out there in PSA 10 holders. Now, I talked about the way, the market can absorb certain cards more than the others, and, Charizard's one of them. There's a lot of Charizard collectors out there. That's the big dog in the Pokemon space. However, 15,200 PSA 10s is too much for anything. I don't care who you are. So this card is certainly oversaturated in my mind in the market. And think about it too. Think about all the Shining Fates that's still out there to be picked up and ripped and opened. I would not be surprised if this ends up with over 20,000 in the population report for PSA 10s here in the next couple years, which I just think that the PSA 10 price is going to continue to come down. That's absolutely crazy. So speaking of coming down, the raw card is also down to $78, so it is down 38% since the end of 2021. Now, getting into the top two right here, this isn't going to surprise everybody, but this is going to be the Rayquaza, the alt art from Evolving Skies. We got super lucky. We bought a couple packs at Publix not long ago. They just had a restock on Evolving Skies, the sleeve boosters. I gave one to my 4-year-old and one to my 7-year-old. My 4-year-old opened up her pack, and this Rayquaza was in there right now. We got it sent off to PSA, got it graded, came back as a 10. So this is a card near and dear to my heart, not just because of the value of the card, but just the memories of doing it with my kids. So, the number 2 card in Evolving Skies when this came out in December of 2021, still the number 2 card in Evolving Skies right now. One of the big chase cards from the biggest set from the Sword and Shield era. PSA 10s, they were over $500 through November of 2022. They've retained a decent amount of that value, down at $360, but still down for one of the biggest chase cards from one of the biggest sets from the Sword and Shield era in what is the crown jewel of the grading hobby, a PSA 10 slab. It is still down versus November of 2022, down to $360. Now, the PSA 10 population of this card is right at 3,300. Again, a big card from a big set. I think that's an okay number. I don't think it's oversaturated by any means, but it's not super low either. I think it's right in the middle where I expect it to be. But again, another one where we see the PSA 10 price coming down and we see the raw card going up. This was at $165 in December of 21. It is all the way up to $225 from a raw card perspective with a gain of 36%. Now, what will surprise none of you is this right here. The number 1 card then is still the number 1 card now. And not only is it the number 1 card from 2021, it is the number 1 card in the entire Sword and Shield era. And that is, of course, the Moonbreon. We talk about it all the time on this channel. It is good to be the king. Now, it's a stunner, right? It's a once in an era type card that everybody is all about. And look at that PSA 10 price graph right there. How amazing is it? It started high, then it came down, then it kind of bucked up, then it went down, then it just went through this absolute period of insane growth where all of a sudden something clicked in the hobby and everybody was like, this is the card. I want to get in on it. I don't want to miss the boat. And it was all the way up selling over $1,000. There are multiple sales for this in PSA 10 for over $1,000. Sometimes that happens. The market gets feverish. There's this frenzy in the air and people go nuts. And that is what happened with this card. Now, it has come back down. It's going for about $800 in PSA 10. I'm sure you can get better deals than that if you hunt hard, but it's right in the high 7s, low $800 range. And the PSA 10 population is almost at 5,500. Again, certain cards can outperform a large population. Now, I think this is going to continue to grow. There's still a lot of Evolving Skies out there. If you guys saw the list of things that I'm going after for the month of December, a lot of the sealed product that I'm going after has Evolving Skies packs in it, and those are readily available. So this Umbreon population is going to go up. Where is it going to go? I don't know. How high can it go when the market finally stops to be able to absorb it and it starts to come back down? I don't know. All I'm going to say is I keep a close eye on this PSA 10 population, not just because I care about it for this card, but whenever we get to that big chase card for Scarlet and Violet, whatever that might be, I want to understand how the Moonbreon has performed. That way I can give some similarities to it and give me some idea of what the next one might be. Now, the raw card is absolutely bonkers. Everybody understands that this card just went batty, right? In December of 21, it was $175-ish, and now the raw cards are going for about $500. So this card is the anomaly. This card is the once in an era set, or once in an era card, and it's performed really, really well, and it's been amazing to watch this thing run, and I can't wait to continue to watch it run more in the future. So listen, again, the value in this content isn't necessarily saying hey, these cards went up or down in value, but it's to give us some idea of how particular years of the most recent era has performed. Now, again, as I always say, the past doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. We got to take it all with a grain of salt, because guess what? We were going through a little thing called a pandemic. A bunch of people were flooding into the market. Like, it was just a totally different hobby back then than it is now. But some of my big takeaways is I'm going to have to do some more research into PSA 10 prices, whether they appreciate or depreciate. And I'm also going to have to compare that against some raw cards, because hey, maybe raw cards are the better play here in the Pokemon space. I'm certainly not saying that right now, but it's worth a whole lot of data dives. So if you want to get looped in when I finish that data and I do the videos, hit that subscribe button. Questions or comments, drop them down below. As always, if you like what you see, give us a thumbs up. I appreciate you, and I hope you have an epic one. Thanks, everybody.